No, algo gorda que eso es producción. Sì, perché Allen non conosce parlante, però ritiene in sue limitazioni.
Esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
More than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to our member states and the people we serve. In response, the OAS Secretariat for Integral Development adopted a three-pronged approach by 1. Adjusting our portfolio of existing projects, 2. Exploring new projects to meet emerging needs, And 3, expanding multi-sectoral partnerships. The results achieved in 2020 demonstrate the resilience of our member states and the commitment of the OAS SETI to work with member states and partners towards our common goals in the development of our region. Our Network on Competitiveness launched the COVID-19 Ideas Accelerator, sharing 250 tools, health solutions, responses, and recovery plans. The Network for Labor Administration published a portfolio of responses from ministries of labor to COVID-19, sharing over 420 measures taken to protect workers, employment, and income. Likewise, the Inter-American Teacher Education Network series, Teaching STEM in Quarantine, provided 117,000 teachers with key tools to continue advancing STEM education during the pandemic. Through its network and platforms, the Inter-American Committee on Ports promoted international and national best practices, guidelines, protocols, and recommendations on COVID-19 safety measures and continuity of logistic operations. Initiatives such as the Education in Times of Change platform allowed us to meet urgent needs by offering timely tools on virtual education and a dedicated space for ministries to share strategies, actions, and solutions. Other programs such as the Rural Fund stepped up, providing emergency grants to offset the challenges imposed on our students by the pandemic. SETI's partnerships are adding value to member states in the form of technical assistance, training, and access to tools and services. In partnership with leading private sector institutions, we offered micro, small, and medium enterprises access to online tools and training, increasing their visibility and participation in e-commerce, a key to their survival and growth in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. A new OAS SETI Facebook initiative provided 85,000 MSMEs across the region with capacity building opportunities and WhatsApp business tools to aid response, recovery, and resilience building. The Caribbean Small Business Development Centers program achieved real impact, supporting new businesses, expanding sales, and driving growth. The new network of Caribbean SPDCs will broaden the program's reach. The Inter-American Committee on Tourism, the CTOUR, convened ministerial-level policy dialogue in an urgent response to the impact of the pandemic on the hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors. Policymakers and experts discussed biosanitary protocols, travel and visa facilitation, among other critical areas for the sector's recovery. Partnering with the George Washington University and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, we went ahead with the scheduled first Indigenous Tourism Forum of the Americas, pivoting to a virtual format and convening over 240 participants from indigenous communities, the private sector, and governments. SETI also integrated sustainable development practices in the COVID-19 response. The pandemic is a daily reminder of the links between water, health, sanitation, food security, and nutrition. We ensured the continuity of our water management projects in the Plata Basin and worked with governments and partners in the design of an investment portfolio valued at $90 million. Additionally, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas continued to share relevant best practices and responses to the pandemic on energy and air quality. These few examples indicate our collective impact. We cannot do this alone. It is now more urgent than ever to address the region's structural weaknesses, to recover from the health, economic, and social crises occasioned by the pandemic and prepare for future shocks. It is imperative that we work together as we risk losing recent development gains and seeing millions fall back into poverty. It is time for the region to redirect course and pursue a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for all. We are in this together.
But the resilience building agenda is too big for any one stakeholder to address acting alone, and simply bringing together stakeholders, whether at the national, subnational, regional, or global level, is not enough. Effective, focused, and sustained coordination among stakeholders is paramount to provide countries with integrated and comprehensive support.
The OAS, as a hemispheric forum and honest broker, must continue to facilitate this process while we work with member states towards the attainment of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships that include all actors strengthen us, enabling us to be more than the sum of our parts. We can and we must work together. The future of our region depends on it.
On September 11, 2001 in Lima, Peru, the OAS General Assembly adopted with the unanimous vote of its member states the Inter-American Democratic Charter. This resolution was the result of a request that the Summit of the Americas, meeting in April of that year in Quebec, made to the regional organization. This charter is the final link in a pioneering development of the Inter-American system since the adoption in Bogota in 1948 of the charter by which the Organization of American States was established. The context surrounding its adoption was very different from that of previous decades.
The decade of the 90s was unique for the hemisphere. In South America, military regimes realized that modern societies were too complicated to be ruled with bayonets. In Central America, the Cold War, the proxy war between the United States and the Soviet bloc had worn itself out, and there was a sense that the only solution was not military, but political and democratic.
The Democratic Charter took advantage of this moment to define that representative democracy is the sum of many elements that comprise it, and it lists the essential ones among them: respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, access to power and its exercise subject to the rule of law, the holding of free, periodic, and fair elections, the pluralistic system of political parties and organizations, and the separation and independence of the branches of government. But that was not enough.
En muchos de los países de América del Sur, los países de América Central también estaban terminando largos periodos dictatoriales, generalmente terminados además en conflictos y guerras civiles muy dolorosas. Entonces, el primer trabajo en el marco de la OEA es: no queremos más los golpes militares. Ese fue el primer entorno, y sobre eso hubo un consenso a principios de los 90. Pero luego se fueron produciendo estas nuevas modalidades de alteración, y ahí se genera un nuevo consenso en la región. Tampoco queremos estas nuevas modalidades de alteración del orden constitucional.
These new modalities had a specific form. Legitimately elected governments were the ones that subverted democracy. Thus, the Charter contemplated mechanisms to face the case of a threat, a serious alteration or even rupture of the democratic order.
La defensa interamericana de la democracia es el concepto fundamental. También lo es la democracia como derecho de los pueblos de las Américas. Esos son los dos puntos en los cuales la Carta Democrática Interamericana introduce también fuertes innovaciones en cuanto a que no solamente es una responsabilidad de cada país defender la democracia en el hemisferio, sino que son todos los países responsables de la defensa de la democracia en el hemisferio y la Secretaría General.
At the very moment the charter was being approved in Lima, the world was convulsed by the attacks in New York and Washington, D.C. The next day, the world would no longer be the same. Thanks to the charter, neither would the way the Americas protected democracy. The member states of the OAS had provided solid grounds to defend it together.
Los fundamentales son el compromiso por parte de todos los estados americanos de aceptar estas modalidades por las cuales otros estados pueden actuar para promover y inclusive la Secretaría General para promover y consolidar la democracia en un estado. Esto ha sido absolutamente pionero. Recién ahora otros sistemas regionales están incorporando normas similares.
2 decades since its creation, the strengths of the charter are clearly visible.
Bueno, la Carta Democrática Interamericana yo diría que tiene tres formas de aplicación. Una es la parte, lo que es lo medular de la Carta, que yo siempre he llamado un programa de la República Democrática. Y por lo tanto, ahí el desafío es ver hasta qué punto los países, dentro de un régimen democrático, van cumpliendo los distintos aspectos de la Carta. El segundo aspecto es el que dice en relación con la aplicación de la Carta cuando hay riesgo de ruptura de la democracia. Esto tiene una cierta limitación porque son los países, los gobiernos tienen que pedir esa actuación, y el desafío más grande es cuando se produce, ya cuando la Asamblea General determina que se ha producido una ruptura de la democracia.
Since its adoption, the Inter-American Democratic Charter has been invoked on at least 16 occasions, making use of its preventative and restorative functions in Venezuela, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Haiti, among others. In all these cases, the Charter was the guide and reference for the decisions of member states. But the great success of the Charter is in what is not seen. The Charter is a new expression of collective democratic values and principles.
La Carta Democrática es una suerte de constitución política, ética y moral del ejercicio de la democracia en el continente. Es única en el mundo porque no solamente defiende la democracia desde un punto de vista declarativo, sino también establece procedimientos precisos y puntuales para cuando existe alguna ruptura o amenaza al orden democrático, y le da también, tanto a los países miembros como al secretario general, instrumentos valiosos para poder actuar en situaciones de emergencia. Creo que la Carta Democrática, así lo hemos constatado, es una guía de acción para gobiernos, para ciudadanos, para partidos políticos, para empresarios, para todas las organizaciones de la sociedad civil, de cuál es la aspiración democrática en la que estamos todos inscritos.
The validity of the Charter undoubtedly goes hand in hand with the validity of democracy, which is essentially a work that is constantly being built.
Democracias perfectas todavía no las hay. Tenemos democracias perfectibles o muy perfectibles. Pero sí, la Carta Democrática Interamericana ha sido una referencia fundamental de nuestros países, de actuar en consonancia con la misma, de no apartarse de la misma, o de que cuando se apartan de la misma existen mecanismos de sanciones y de acciones del sistema interamericano para volver a encauzar los mismos a la vía democrática. Es un trabajo permanente, es un trabajo continuo y es un trabajo que siempre sufre retrocesos en ese proceso.
La democracia no ha ido mucho más allá de lo que era hace 10 años atrás, pero tampoco ha retrocedido tan sustantivamente en la región. Existen en ella grandes posibilidades democráticas y grandes desafíos. Desde el punto de vista de la génesis de los gobiernos, todavía las cosas están razonablemente bien, y desde el punto de vista de la caída de gobiernos tampoco han habido demasiadas situaciones así. Y efectivamente hay algunos problemas de de derechos humanos y de democracia no resueltos, pero yo creo que en general la Carta Democrática Interamericana sigue vigente.
That the Charter remains alive is shown by its adaptability to new demands, like gender equality.
La Carta Democrática Interamericana es un instrumento poderoso. Es un acuerdo entre los estados que le da una ruta sobre los conceptos de democracia y que lo liga a un apellido poderoso que es la representatividad. Y justamente este concepto de representatividad de la Carta Democrática nos permite colocar esta reflexión feminista en términos de una democracia paritaria que nos permita accesar a los espacios y estar representadas en la misma dimensión que la población está constituida. Si somos la mitad de mujeres y la mitad de hombres, así debe ser el espejo de la representación.
A successful past and a vibrant present do not, however, mean an assured future. Prolonging the validity of the Charter in the future is everyone's job.
El mejor funcionamiento democrático implica democracias más eficientes. Si vamos en el camino de la Carta Democrática Interamericana, si todos nuestros países fueran en el camino de la Carta Democrática Interamericana, estaríamos definitivamente en el más pleno ejercicio de mejores democracias, de instituciones más fuertes y más eficientes. Para mí es esta Constitución de las Américas, hay que preservarla, hay que fortalecerla, hay que hacerla vigente en los hechos, en las acciones, en el compromiso de los países. Los contenidos están muy bien, son perfectos, son los justos, son los que corresponden a los estados de derecho democráticos que deben tener la región. Es el deber ser. Entonces es nuestro compromiso el de hacerla funcionar de la mejor forma y hacia eso debemos ir.
Bueno, la CIM tiene una agenda enorme en el tema de democracia y de liderazgos. El primer ámbito tiene que ver con la gobernanza electoral, para que esta gobernanza electoral responda a las necesidades con las que fue creada, y es buscar los
Señor presidente, contamos con el quórum.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum. Thank you and good afternoon. Following through with our order of business now, it falls to us to hear the presentation from Commissioner Julissa Mantilla Falcón from the Inter-American Human Rights Commission, President of the Inter-American Human Rights Commission. You have the floor. Your Excellency Cesar Rodrigo Landa Arroyo, Chair of the General Assembly, Secretary General, Your Excellency Luis Almagro, Your Excellency Nestor Mendez, Assistant Secretary General of the OAS, heads of delegations, permanent representatives, alternates, and member states of the OAS. It's an honor for me to speak to you in my capacity as President of the Inter-American Human Rights Commission to address a number of topics that appear in our annual report 2021. In honor, that takes on even more importance given that we are holding this General Assembly in Lima, and given that I am the first Peruvian woman president of the Commission, Human Rights Commission, IACHR, in history. Before beginning, I would like to express my recognition of my fellow commissioners, especially the second Vice President, Margaret May Macaulay, who is with me on this opportunity, as well as the Executive Secretary, Tanya Renault, and everyone from the Executive Secretariat who is here or for their excellent work and their commitment on a daily basis to their efforts. I would like to remember the loss of our dear friend at the Executive Secretariat, Human Rights Specialist Mario Lopez Garelli. The Commission and the Executive Secretariat are extremely grateful for his nearly 3 decades of public service and dedication to the human rights cause, and the huge professional legacy and human legacy that he has left us after leaving the ISHR. I'd also like to remind everyone who carries out our work, who defend land and territory, especially indigenous persons, women who lead movements to support human rights, especially sexual and reproductive rights, journalists, men and women under threat, judges and prosecutors who on a daily basis are protecting the independence of justice, lesbian, gay, trans persons who daily encounter resistance to diversity, Afro-descendant persons who continue to be the subject of discrimination, political prisoners, especially in Nicaragua, among so many others that move us with their experiences and inspire us in our fight, from their fight, rather. I would like to focus on 2021 and the work we did, given that the pandemic continued to accentuate the vulnerability of groups that were already historically discriminated against in the context of worldwide economic and climate emergencies. Now in 2021, in the petitions and case system, the Commission evaluated 2,327 petitions in their initial examination and approved 345 admissibility reports and 75 merits reports, and sent 40 cases to the Inter-American Human Rights Court, strengthening this way access to justice for victims of human rights violations. Signing 21 friendly settlement agreements and also approving 15 agreements that enabled the Commission to open up avenues for comprehensive reparations for victims. 1,185 requests for precautionary measures were also evaluated by the Commission, granting 73, broadening 33, bringing immediate relief and protection. Now, regarding monitoring, in 2021, the Commission undertook an analysis of the situation of each one of the 35 countries of the region, including special reports on Cuba, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Furthermore, it approved 3 country reports on Brazil, Nicaragua, and El Salvador. It strengthened its array of training activities through virtual training, carrying out 357 different promotion activities, taking part in 227 that it was invited to. So the Commission continues to respond effectively and immediately to human rights situations that arose in different countries through its SACROI timely coordination and response rooms. The human rights crisis that took place in 2021 was dealt with directly. We carried out working visits to Colombia in June, in the midst of protests in Ecuador in December on those persons deprived of liberty. The Commission recognizes these states for how open they are to international scrutiny and for the willingness to accept technical cooperation to address these situations. And so we did see, however, some worrisome trends that have to do with the weakening of national human rights institutions and the shrinking of democratic spaces through laws and initiatives that curtail the right of association, participation, and peaceful assembly and freedom of expression. And we also saw some situations of stigmatization of people who carry out the defense of human rights. This comes from all walks of state authority. And also we see that social leaders and journalists are also subject to this scrutiny. We also noted a trend of a peaceful social protest, including that is curtailing or limiting such peaceful protests, criminalizing it. And so there are other trends that the Commission has seen that can undermine the independence of the judiciary in countries of the region, and judicial operators have their independent work being undermined by the fact that threats are being lodged against them, and they're criminalized. Also, the Commission saw in 2021 the persistence of discrimination and the different types and forms of violence perpetrated against women, LGBTI persons, Afro-descendant and indigenous persons, girls, boys, adolescents, elderly, and persons with disabilities. And the Commission continued to monitor the serious situation of people deprived of liberty. Also, we are concerned by those who are on the move, migrants. And so the Commission continued to pay much attention to Nicaragua during 2021 through its special follow-up mechanism, MESENI, and which is the monitoring that's being done since the crisis of April 18, 2018, given the ongoing weakening of the rule of law and a de facto state of exception. I take this opportunity to reiterate the Commission's commitment to continue to staying abreast of the situation of political prisoners in Nicaragua and to promote, together with the international community, the upholding of their fundamental liberties and rights. I would also report to you that the Commission is wrapping up the preparation of a new strategic plan, which will be the roadmap for its work over the next 4 years through 2027. To do so, in addition to taking a close look at our prior plan, we have opened this up to a public consultation period for us to identify challenges in the human rights context and come up with strategies to rise to those challenges. We are very grateful for the state's collaboration in this effort and to ensure that victims can be heard. And I would reassert the willingness and will of the Commission to continue fulfilling the mandate entrusted by states to it with institutional resolve and exercising its autonomy and independence with the support of states, civil society, and all the other actors that take part in the inter-American system, as well as the General Secretariat of the OAS, will be decisive for us to consolidate the legitimacy of the IACHR and its mission to promote the observance and defense of human rights. In such a difficult situation that our region has before it, the Inter-American Commission will continue to offer voice to those who have no voice and who turn to it as a last source of hope to access justice. Thank you.
Mantilla Falcón.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for that presentation. Now we're going to hear from the Inter-American Judicial Committee, Dr. Luis Garcia. Welcome to this General Assembly. You have the floor. Dr. Cesar Landa Roy, Chairman of the General Assembly, representatives of member states of the Organization of American States, Ambassador Luis Almagro, Secretary General and Assistant Secretary General, Your Excellency Nestor Mendez. I thank you. I thank the delegations for giving me the opportunity to present the work that we have carried out in the Judicial Committee in 2021, details of which you can see on the committee's webpage. Document CP/5560. Recent developments. Over the course of 2021, 2 different regular periods of sessions were held virtually because of the pandemic, the COVID-19 virus, one in April and one in August. During these sessions, the committee created 4 instruments that are a response to mandates issued by the General Assembly, save one, sent to this body for its consideration. The recommendations regarding domestic law on regulating fireworks and different pyrotechnical devices in the Americas and the progressive reduction of it and on other aspects having to do with public health, well-being, the environment. The recommendations are a guiding light for its implementation, extending its breadth of application to the production, sale, and distribution. Now report on the inter-American legal framework to enhance economic and social resilience in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic and its ensuing effects. And so we address the need for there to be a specific legal framework created with political operational guidelines set for guiding decision-making through concrete actions that will serve as a reference in future situations similar to COVID-19. The Inter-American Judicial Committee urged the Summit of the Americas to act collectively, proposing that this be sent to the summit. Now, the protection of privacy and data, personal data, to offer greater transparency in treatment of personal data, as well as accountability by those parties obliged by this, those who are who manage this information, and to empower citizens. These principles were approved by the General Assembly of the OAS in November of 2021. The International Law Department was asked to disseminate this information through different international reports and publications in the 4 official OAS languages. The Declaration on Neuroscience and Human Rights and New Legal Challenges for the Americas introduces a topic in this organization, framing it around 5 particular issues, making an appeal for there to be a discussion among states, academic sector, the member states. In August of this year, the committee adopted a declaration on the unviability of a diplomatic headquarters and how this relates to diplomatic asylum in response to a General Assembly mandate. The committee asserts that the rules on the unassailability of diplomatic headquarters allows for no exception, and that those measures called for in diplomatic law are the only ones that can be resorted to should that be called into question. Now, in August, 2 reports were sent by us to the states, and that will happen January 15th, 2023. Developments of international standards on customary law and new law. We thank you for all your support. Disseminating international law. A course on international law. Wow, in 2021 was the 2nd consecutive year that we could not carry out this course, given the conditions brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. In August of this year, this activity was resumed, and it took place between 1st and 12th of August, 2 weeks. The course was carried out in the law school in Rio, the Federal University, with 39 different participants of different states. There were international law professors and people from different international organizations and jurists, a quite diverse array of teachers. Antonio Cansado Trindad, who passed away in May of this year, homage was paid to him during this course, and the rapporteurs were able to talk about the different topics to the students during this course, and students asked them questions. Given a lack of financing by the OAS for students, we urged the ministries to engage or offer their top-level diplomats opportunity to take this course. Now, the ministries of foreign relations of member states in August of 2021, a new joint meeting was held with legal advisors in which there was an exchange about cybersecurity and regional customs. Some consultants made suggestions for new topics and recommendations to make sure that the relationship with the Inter-American Judicial Committee be more effective, extending periods, for example, to answer questions and to follow up on answers provided. 20 member states took part. We would invite you to take part in the next meeting, which will take place in person at the headquarters of the committee in the second half of 2023. We take note of the reform of the statute of the committee to achieve gender equality among its members adopted in the General Assembly in November of 2021, and we make a call to the states to take this into consideration when candidacies, asking them to submit candidates to fill future vacancies on the budget. We respectfully ask that the budget we've been provided with over the last couple of years be kept up so we can carry out our activities, especially now that we're coming back to in-person meetings. And in the near future, the secretary of the committee, that position should be reinstated. That was a concern that emerged of late, having to do with the support to our technical secretariat, the Department of International Law, which requires more human resources to meet the growing needs of the rapporteurship of the committee. This department only has 4 lawyers currently, and in addition to helping the committee, it also offers services to other areas, and also they do much work disseminating international law. And so I would just put on the record that all of the employees of this office are very professional. We would like to express how pleased we are that the government of Peru has invited us to hold our 7th regular session that took place in Lima in person in May of this year. The committee adopted a declaration on international law that underscores, among other things, compliance with essential principles of the OAS Charter and the obligations that emanate from treaties and other sources of international law. Finally, I take this opportunity to report to you that in the August session, members of the committee elected the new authorities. And so, as president, Dr. Antonio Moreno Rodriguez was elected from Paraguay, and as vice president, Dr. Jorge Rodrigo Bandeira Lindo from Brazil. Both will start their functions at the beginning of next year, and this is a 2-year mandate for both. Mr. Chairman, I would like to express thanks for the attention you've given me and to tell you that the committee stands by to assist in any task entrusted to us, such as all the reports that we have carried out over the years, and we are committed to promote and to progressively develop and to codify international law in the Americas. Thank you very much.
Doctor García Grochano, muchas gracias.
Thank you for that presentation, Doctor. The next item, today's order of business, is the presentation by the President of the Inter-American Commission of Women, SIM. I'm pleased to give the floor to Minister Maria Inés Castillo de San Martín, President of SIM.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon, Good afternoon, Your Excellency Cesar Rodrigo Landa, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Peru, Secretary General of the OAS, Your Excellency Luis Almagro, and Assistant Secretary General Nestor Mendes, esteemed heads of delegation and permanent observer countries, ladies and gentlemen, and representatives of civil society, dear colleagues, it is an honor for me to address you as the President of the Inter-American Commission on Women, recently elected at the 39th Assembly of the SEAM, held in Panama last May. At this General Assembly of the OAS, it is clear that we emphasize how necessary it is to work on gender equality and the protection of the rights of women to meet the goals of this Assembly, working together towards inequality and discrimination. Since the beginning of the pandemic of COVID-19, the OAS and the region of the Americas, and women in particular, showed an enormous level of resiliency and capacity to adapt, to change, and to meet the various challenges of this new normal. Even so, the series of documents published about the gender dimensions of the pandemic has made more visible the deep levels of poverty and inequality of women as a result of the pandemic. This added decades decades to the work to overcome the Sustainable Development Goal number 5, where all member states are committed to gender equality and the empowerment of all women and men. Mr. Secretary General and Chair, it is our pleasure to present the annual report of the Inter-American Commission on Women, which shows a significant work done in addressing the persistent gender gaps and to strengthen standards in our region to protect the economic and social rights of women, to address with concrete tools the implementation of integral care systems and the promotion of social responsibility for the state, for families, and a proposed model inter-American law of care to strengthen also the role of women in political spheres, promoting the exchange of good practices, best practices in terms of parity courses for women political candidates that have been implemented in a number of countries, to develop new training tools for women that are both democratic and feminist-oriented in the resolution of conflicts, to position women leaders in the fight against corruption. In terms of the commitments adopted at the Summit of the Americas, to strengthen national mechanisms for the role of women in the implementation of equal policies and gender policies at the national level, and to promote and give follow-up to mechanisms from the Convention of Belém do Pará on the prevention and eradication of violence against women. Above all, from an intersectional perspective and with attention on particular groups of women, girls, adolescents, women with disabilities, who face multiple barriers to the enjoyment of their rights and to live free of violence. During the last few years, the Inter-American Commission on Women has undertaken significant efforts to broaden its representation with member states of the OAS, with women ministers, high-level political representatives, international organizations, public institutions at the national level, parliaments and the academic sector, as well as other key sectors. Part of this important effort has been to establish new alliances with the broad coalition of feminist organizations to raise this theme at the highest level of multilateral forums and efforts so that we can respond to these needs. This effort, which we have called Building Bridges, is part of the strategic plan of the CIM adopted by the 39th Assembly. The plan is to adopt key accelerators for the parity and gender equality agenda, the protection of economic rights of women, care in a cross-cutting approach so as to consolidate the results, the positive results achieved. At the same time, and in response to the demands from member states and of women, the CIM has added new themes to its work plan. In particular, peace and security, climate change, rural women, and sexual and reproductive health. In recent years, a growing number of member states has expressed its support for the work of the CIM and has requested assistance and technical support in a number of areas. Likewise, within the difficult financial situation faced by the OAS, both member states as well as the General Secretariat have carried out actions to dampen the impact of such financial constraints on the Inter-American Commission on Women. Nonetheless, the budget cuts have required the CIM to emphasize more of its work on the mobilization of specific resources. And in this regard, the governments of Canada, China, Chile, Spain, France, Italy, Liechtenstein, Mexico, Portugal, Trinidad and Tobago, as well as the Eurosocial Program, the Spotlight Program, and the Pan American Foundation for Development have offered absolutely vital support for the work of the CIM in these areas. For this reason, as part of the negotiations for the budget proposals for the OAS, the commitment of the OAS to the CIM is key. The Inter-American Commission Women, the oldest organization in our region to promote and protect the rights of women, needs your support today. The evidence shows that societies with the highest level of equality are more prosperous, more democratic, and more peaceful, and have lower levels of poverty and inequality in all other areas. Gender equality is not a question only for women. This is a matter addressing democracy that should be and is of concern to all of us. Let us take advantage of the opportunity that this assembly gives us of putting gender equality in the center of our discussions, of our debates, and our decisions. Let us all bet on the improvement of our societies through gender equality, and I ask that you invest in the Inter-American Commission on Women. Let us not let it languish. Let's invest in women, because this means to transform the world. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Ministra Castillo de San Martín.
Thank you, Minister Castillo de San Martín. We will now hear the remarks from the President of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, Judge Pérez Manrique. Judge Pérez Manrique, welcome to this session. You have the floor.
Señor.
Your Excellency, Dr. Cesar Rodrigo Landa Arroyo, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Peru, Excellency, Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Your Excellency, Secretary General Luis Almagro, Assistant Secretary General Nestor Mendez, heads of delegation of permanent observer countries, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome from my colleagues on the Inter-American Court of Human Rights and in my own stead. It is my pleasure to present the annual report of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights for the year 2021. 2021 was a year of great challenges and transition. Despite the fact that we worked only virtually, we had longer sessions at the court. We had 7 regular sessions, period of sessions, which covered 30 weeks of joint meetings over the course of that year, this being the period that had the longest and most extensive number of sessions in the history of the court. Our productivity thus increased, and we had an average of 22 months per case. The Inter-American Court of Human, the Inter-American Court of Human Rights has no arrears in terms of the payments of our budgeted salaries. We had 14 public audiences for oversight and on provisional measures. We issued 24 substantive judgments, 30 interpretation for a total of 47 resolutions, and 22 on provisional measures and 2 other opinions. During the course of the year, the court issued jurisprudence on very relevant and timely issues such as access to vaccines for COVID-19 to migrants, the rights of elderly persons, persons with disabilities, and persons belonging to indigenous and tribal groups, the relationship between human rights and enterprises, violence against trans women, and the due diligence necessary for judging these kinds of cases of violence in light of the Belém do Pará Convention, reproductive health of women, sexual violence against women journalists, and this impact on freedom of expression. Likewise, we reaffirmed the standards on freedom of expression and broadened the court's jurisdiction on the abuse of judicial mechanisms against those who are working in the exercise of freedom of expression. We created new standards through important consultative opinions regarding an indefinite presidential election, affirming that this is contrary to the Inter-American Convention as well as labor rights of men and women workers from a gender perspective. In keeping with the theme of this assembly, working together towards or working against inequality and discrimination, the court's conviction is firm and clear. Equality and non-discrimination is the basis, the foundation of the work of our court, and this perspective must be integrated for a true democratic rule of law, and this must be founded on policies and actions that favor equality and against all forms of discrimination. Over the course of many years, our court has shown itself to be an open court, open to dialogue, which has allowed for the development of open justice. This is necessary for the preservation of our work against climate change and in fulfillment of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. We are moving towards zero use of paper. Due to circumstances imposed by the pandemic in 2021, more than 20 important training programs were carried out that reached as many as 10,000 people. These were not seminars or conferences, but systematic training courses, both for court personnel, lawyers, men and women lawyers, as well as journalists on the Inter-American legal system. We reaffirm the dialogue on jurisprudence at various levels. Along these same lines, we participated in the second Forum on Human Rights together with the Court of Human Rights of Africa and the European Court of Human Rights. Likewise, the secretariat of these courts are constantly in touch with each other and carry out permanent coordination efforts. The court is also in permanent dialogue with the constitutional courts and supreme courts throughout our region through the exchange of jurisprudence and training programs, and increasingly, our court incorporates decisions of national courts and the arguments used in the issuance of their judgments. A clear policy of our court is to work more closely with the Caribbean region and with the Tribunal of the Caribbean, the High Court of the Caribbean, the Central American Court of Justice, the Court of the Andean Community, and the Inter-American Court of Human Rights signed the Declaration of Port of Spain, which has as its goal to deepen the cooperation between our courts and a reaffirmation of democracy and the rule of law. Along these same lines, our court agreed to host the next meeting of international courts of the Hemisphere of the Americas to be held in Costa Rica the next year. Finally, it is my delight to share with you deeper efforts at relationships with the Caribbean, and we will recommence the issuance of scholarships for lawyers, men and women lawyers from the Caribbean, which will be integrated into the work of our court using this scholarship that will allow them to work in our court for the period of 1 year. Ladies and gentlemen, the plenary of the court has resolved to communicate to this General Assembly its concern for human rights in Nicaragua. October 3rd, last Monday, measures were issued that involved a degrading treatment of people there. Our court has declared the state of Nicaragua to be in contempt of the court's rulings in the inter-American system, in consonance with the claims presented by the civil society and the academy. We must remember the need to give opportune consideration to these rulings. The reference of met objectives, data, standards developed, and achievements that, despite the challenges of our budget, the court has shown itself to be adaptable and capable of meeting its goal of making effective, within its competency, the protection of human rights and victims of serious violations of human rights. Thank you. Judge Pérez Manrique, thank you very much for your presentation. On our agenda, the next point is the presentation of the director for the Pan American Health Organization, who, due to exigent circumstances, is unable to join us today. Prior to hearing the video of Dr. Etienne, I will ask that we show the message sent by Dr. Gadros Ahanom, the president of the World Health Organization, Director General of the World Health Organization.
Hello, buenos dias, bon dia, and bonjour. The COVID-19 pandemic made clear that when health is at risk, everything is at risk. It has disrupted economies, schools, families, societies, and more. Even before the pandemic, almost 1/3 of the world's population lacked access to essential health services, and almost 2 billion people experienced financial hardship in doing so. Compounding this are the existential crisis of climate change, food insecurity, and prolonged conflict. The need for universal health coverage in all countries is more obvious and urgent than ever. That's why one of WHO's top priorities for the next 5 years is supporting countries to make a radical reorientation of their health systems towards primary health care as the foundation of universal health coverage. The world has changed, but our ambition has not. A world in which no child misses out on vaccination, no woman misses out on the sexual and reproductive care she needs, no household need decide between food and medicine, no community misses out on care where and when they need it, not health for most, not health for some, health for all. Gracias, obrigado, merci, I thank you.
Agradezco a la oficina.
I thank the Office of the Director of the Pan American Health Organization for making it possible for us to hear from the Director General of the World Health Organization. And now I ask the Secretariat to share the video message from Dr. Etienne.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me to join you today. And I apologize that I cannot be there in person with you. Special greetings to the government of Peru for hosting this important gathering of member states. As director of the Pan American Health Organization, I have had a front row seat as we witnessed and responded to the challenges brought upon our region by COVID-19. As we all coped with the severity of this disease, health workers and health systems were being pushed well past their limits, and rampant misinformation about safe and effective vaccines made our jobs harder. But I also witnessed the broader effects of the pandemic on our region as it challenged our economic and political stability. Hunger is at its highest rate in 15 years in Latin America and the Caribbean, and 16 countries in the Americas are still not expected to return to pre-pandemic GDP levels in 2022. We must heed the lessons from the past few years. There are three aspects of our region in particular that I believe left us vulnerable to the most disruptive consequences of COVID-19. The first is inequality. The Americas are not the richest region in the world, nor are we the poorest, but we are the most unequal. This inequality has hampered our ability to respond quickly to the pandemic within countries and as a region. I have said it before, and I will say it again. Inequity fuels disease. When we invest in health, we minimize the effects of economic inequality and build healthier, more stable societies. But to my second point, our region does not invest enough in public health. PAHO recommends that countries invest a minimum of 6% of their GDP in health. Although some countries raise their health expenditure as a response to the pandemic, this has not been sustained. And most in our region are still falling quite short of that goal. And we all feel the consequences. It is critical that we deliver universal access to health and universal health coverage with primary health care as the foundation, that we deliver this across every country in our region. An investment in health is what will get us there. But it will also help us to build a more resilient, self-sufficient regional health ecosystem. And this brings me to my third point. The Americas rely too heavily on imported health products. Latin America and the Caribbean, for example, depend almost entirely on other regions to produce the essential medicines and health technologies that their population need to stay healthy. And this reliance keeps us at the whim of an ever-changing global market that does not prioritize our region, as you all know very well. The Americas have the industrial expertise and innovation capacity to change this. In fact, we can work to patch each of these vulnerabilities, but only by working together. For all of PAHO's 120 years, the Americas have relied on cooperation and collective action because we've understood that our health, our security, and our prosperity are interdependent. This cooperation allowed us to eliminate polio, measles, rubella, and neonatal tetanus. It has helped us increase life expectancy and reduce childhood mortality over the past few decades, giving millions of people the possibility to live a productive and fulfilling life. But too often, political differences and growing nationalism have stood in the way of partnership. These barriers have plagued us during the pandemic. We must recognize that collaboration across countries, like at this week's forum, makes us all safer. When organizations like PAHO and the OAS work together, as we have throughout the pandemic and during the recent Summit of the Americas, we can combine our capacities, intelligence, and resources to recover from this pandemic and stand together in the face of future health threats. We are on our way, but there is much more to be done. At last year's Organization of American States General Assembly, member states resolved to strengthen hemispheric solidarity through regular dialogue with PAHO and to make use of PAHO's multilateral efforts to develop, acquire, and administer vaccines for COVID-19. We have strengthened this partnership between Ministries of Foreign Affairs and Health through sharing lessons from the many policy decisions around COVID-19 that emerged from outside of the health sector. And as a result, I am proud to say that a resolution is on the table at this General Assembly, which was presented by Peru to support the recovery and strengthening of inclusive, resilient health systems. These health systems are essential not just to care for our physical health, but also our mental health. As you know, the pandemic took a serious toll on mental health in our region, escalating rates of depression and anxiety, particularly for vulnerable groups like women and young people. At the same time, our services were underfunded and unable to support people experiencing mental health issues. In the face of this challenge, we have the opportunity to strengthen and improve mental health using transformational, innovative approaches. PAHO has established a high-level commission on mental health and COVID-19. And with the support of other critical regional organizations like the OAS, we will explore the effects of the pandemic on mental health and support countries in advancing their mental health approaches. We are honored and certainly pleased to have Ambassador Nestor Mendez as the co-chair of the Commission. This is the kind of collaboration that will help us to build a healthier, more secure Americas. Over the last 3 years, we have all learned the hard way that health is a central part of national and regional stability. Promoting public health in our region must be at the core of our diplomatic relations and shape how we work together. Let us learn this lesson from the pandemic and build on our collective strengths to further our collaboration across sectors, to better care for the communities we serve in all respects, and to create a truly resilient region. Thank you.
I thank the Office of the Director of PAHO for making it possible for us to view this video of Dr. Etienne at the 52nd General Assembly. I would ask the Secretariat to convey to Dr. Etienne how grateful the General Assembly of the OAS is for her dynamic leadership and strategic approach during the last decade at the helm of the most important health organization of the Americas. Member states would like to express thanks for the very hard work carried out by PAHO to make sure that inhabitants have access to health whenever they need it. Dr. Etienne, the General Assembly of the OAS, especially recognizes and is very grateful for the tireless work carried out by the Pan American Health Organization under your leadership to rein in the spread of COVID-19 and to protect health of the peoples of the Americas during the pandemic. Thank you. I take this opportunity to congratulate Dr. Jarbas Barbosa for his recent election to lead the Pan American Health Organization starting February of 2023. He will enjoy all the support of the member states of our organization. I open the floor now to any delegation that would like to refer to the reports and videos.
Tiene el uso de la palabra la representación del Paraguay.
Paraguay is recognized. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The delegation of Paraguay is very grateful for the reports that the different commissions have presented and for that of the Inter-American Human Rights Court and by PAHO. We would like to reassert our support to these very worthwhile organizations and our commitment to the Inter-American system for the protection and promotion of fundamental rights in the region, an area in which we seek to always move forward according to all those different international commitments we have taken on. I would also like to refer to the sad news we received this week of Mario Lopez Guirelli, the advisor of the Secretariat of the Commission, passed away at his home in the state of Virginia, U.S., last Friday. And I'm grateful that the President of the Inter-American Human Rights Court paid homage to him. Mario Lopez was a doctor of law and a university professor. He joined the ISHR in 1995, and he took on multiple responsibilities at the Commission. He has been director of thematic monitoring, sub-regional coordinator, working with the rapporteurships on the rights of migrant persons, in charge of the Office of Argentina, Ecuador, and that of El Salvador, Chile, and Mexico. Among some other functions over these years, we would also stress his vast background at the ICHR, where he devoted himself with much dedication and professionalism, working tirelessly and passionately for what he believed in favor of protection and promotion of fundamental rights in the Americas. But the most important thing was his gift for how he treated people and to help people. His passing is an irreplaceable loss for the OAS, for our country, and for those who were lucky enough to know him. We will always keep him top of mind, given his openness, his joy, his honorability. And so our condolences to his family. And we feel their pain. Thank you.
Sí. Ahora le corresponde.
Now Mexico has the floor. Mr. Chairman, if you would be so kind. Our chief of delegation is arriving. We would just ask for point of order. Or Honduras, please.
Señor Presidente.
Mr. Chairman, I think that was a technical matter because we did not request the floor. I apologize for that. Secretariat? Haiti. Chief of Delegation of Haiti.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I express my thanks to the great support shown by all delegations for the adoption of the resolution on security in Haiti and continental cooperation for the preservation of democracy and the fight against food insecurity in point 21 of the agenda of this 52nd regular session of the General Assembly. We congratulate the excellent work carried out in the Permanent Council and the General Committee of reaching a text that reflects the concerns both of the Haitian government and the views shared by different delegations when we were engaged in the general debate. This vote is of great importance to Haiti and to our people because this shows and reflects a great commitment of member states to help the people of Haiti to cover control and to fight the armed gangs that have brought about such suffering and loss of lives in our country, and to assist us in supporting national police in the reestablishment of a climate of security. Security in our country is a priority of the government of Haiti, and the provisions announced in this resolution to support the process of dialogue underway in Haiti between political forces and civil society organizations. We also take note of the measures to help us in addressing the questions of food insecurity, which affect a large percentage of our population. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, the adoption of the resolution must be acknowledged, is never in and of itself enough. It will now fall to many of us to work so that all of the goodwill expressed in this resolution is transformed into actions. Thank you.
Tiene uso de la palabra. Canada is recognized.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'd like to start by thanking all of those who presented important and very useful reports this afternoon. There was a matter that was raised in the context of the report of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, which is the situation and the ongoing crisis in Venezuela. On behalf of the member states whose names I will read below, I'm honored to read the following statement on the situation in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. The Ministers of Foreign Affairs and heads of delegation of Brazil, Canada, Chile, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Guatemala, United States of America, Paraguay, and Uruguay gathered on the occasion of the 52nd regular session of the General Assembly of the Organization of American States. Committed to the principles contained in the Charter of the Organization of the American States, as in the Inter-American Democratic Charter, reaffirm the content of Article 1 of the Inter-American Democratic Charter, which establishes that the peoples of the Americas have a right to democracy and their governments have the obligation to promote and defend it. Reiterate that the essential elements of representative democracy include respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, holding of periodic, free, and fair elections based on secret balloting and universal suffrage as an expression of the sovereignty of the people, the pluralistic system of political parties and organizations, and the separation of powers and independence of the branches of government. Also reiterate that democracy is essential for the effective exercise of fundamental freedoms and human rights in their universal character, indivisible and interdependent, enshrined in the respective constitutions of the states and in inter-American and international human rights instruments. Express deep concern at the systemic violations and abuses of human rights that continue to occur in Venezuela and the aggravation of the political, economic, social, and humanitarian crises in that country. Concerned about the content of the annual report of the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights for 2021, which concludes that the erosion of the rule of law in Venezuela has generated, and I quote, a favorable climate for the systematic commission of gross human rights violations. The ICR also notes the consistent practice of extrajudicial executions, arbitrary detentions, forced disappearances, as well as torture and other cruel treatment in context of deprivation of liberty. Alarmed by the content of the recent reports of the United Nations Independent International Fact-Finding Mission on the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, AHRC 4533 CRP 11, dated 15 September 2020, and AHRC 51 CRP 2, AHRC 51 CRP 3, and AHRC 5143, dated 20 September 2022, whose investigations demonstrate that crimes and violations amounting to crimes against humanity, including grave acts of torture, were committed by individuals holding various positions within the hierarchies of DGCIM and SEBIN as part of a plan designed by high-level authorities to repress opponents of the government. Very concerned about the finding of the independent mission concerning state and non-state agents' participation in human trafficking, forced prostitution, sexual and gender violence, and violence against indigenous groups, amongst others, for the exploitation of the Arco Minero in Bolivar State. Note that the two independent mission reports urge the international community to consider taking legal action against individuals responsible for the alleged human rights violations and crimes identified in reports in accordance with their national legislation and international principles applicable. Support the renewal of the United Nations Independent International Fact-Finding Mission on the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Take note of the decision announced by the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court on November 3, 2021, to open a formal investigation after concluding that crimes against humanity could have been committed in Venezuela from the year 2017 in accordance with the Rome Statute. Call for serious expedition and impartial investigations so as to promote justice and clarification of the truth regarding the involvement of senior officials involved in the violations of human rights committed in accordance with international human rights law. Concerned about the subsequent serious migrant and refugee crisis, the largest in the history of Latin America, which has brought 6.8 million Venezuelans to flee the country. Urge the immediate and unconditional release of all political prisoners, the cessation of the harassment, respect for independence of political parties, as well as freedom of expression, including for members of the press, and the restoration of full respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I offer the floor to Costa Rica. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Costa Rica is grateful for the annual report of the Inter-American Human Rights Court, the IACHR, of SIM, the Inter-American Juridical Committee, and of PAHO. The report of the Inter-American Human Rights Court shows that despite the pandemic in 2021, work forged ahead, and there was even a growing number of hearings carried out virtually. This happened in 2021, the year with the most highest number of meetings the court has ever held. This hard work was made visible, the new challenges, and they incorporated new tools and approaches to defend international standards of human rights in the region. Also clear in the report is a matter that Costa Rica has been raising, which is the need to ensure parity in the makeup of the OAS bodies, especially in those that protect human rights. That's why we want to say that in the last regular session of the General Assembly of the OAS, 4 distinguished judges, female judges, were elected, and they started in January 2022. I'm sorry, one judge and 3 women judges, Nancy Hernandez Lopez being a Costa Rican among the 3. The election of 3 women justices of the court show that we're moving in the right direction toward parity in the makeup of the Inter-American Human Rights Court. Parity, I may recall, in all areas of justice, including the Inter-American system, is essential to democracy. Mr. Chairman, Costa Rica recognizes the report given by the President of the Inter-American Human Rights Commission, in which he relates the diligent work carried out by the Commission during the COVID-19 pandemic. That also translated into, or something we could see during the 4 sessions held in 2021, and what we saw was versatility and how they work, and she showed that technological tools can build a bridge between people in the Inter-American system. We have high hopes for the process of building, putting together the new strategic plan, given that it's a participatory process, taking into account the contributions made by states and civil society, users, and the Commission's team itself. We're also pleased to see the improvement of the Samori, the Inter-American Samori system, as for the purpose of exchanging information and on recommendations. Follow up on recommendations. Now recognize the value of the resolutions adopted by the IACHR in 2021. Now, the COVID-19 vaccines and the protection of Haitian citizens and human movements, Inter-American solidarity, and the climate emergency, the spillover effects that has on human rights, all of which provide us with the necessary information to come up with comprehensive, effective, and coordinated responses to some of the most pressing challenges facing the hemisphere. We also appreciate the fact that the commissioners have carried out consultations with member states, bringing them closer, working with the regional groups of the through the secretariats and special rapporteurships, which has contributed to there being a fruitful flow of information, strengthening the relationship between the Commission and member states. We also appreciate the working meetings to review portfolios with our staff in the foreign ministries. This helped to follow up on cases in our portfolio. So Costa Rica reiterates its support and trust in the Inter-American human rights system and in the work carried out by the Commission, which brings a clear and objective and expert view on the human rights situation in the hemisphere. We should all abide by those recommendations because that's what makes it possible for member states to draft its own roadmap in a collective way toward better protection for human rights in our region. Costa Rica is also grateful to the President of CIM, Alejandra Mora Mora, for having presented her report, annual report. Despite the years-long fight to promote and protect the rights of women and girls and all their diversity, we need to redouble our efforts to achieve even greater strides in reducing gaps. We thank CIM for following through on the implementation of the Inter-American Program on the Promotion of Human Rights of Women and Equity and Gender Equality, for the technical assistance given the OAS to bring a gender focus and diversity focus into every area of the Organization of American States, as well as all of the recommendations or the reports made by the group of experts on violence and political harassment. Costa Rica reiterates its commitment to women's and girls' rights in all their diversity. We should fight ever more hard to address the structural causes of violence against women and to close gaps between men and women affecting the region, for which strengthening SIM and MESEFI, without a doubt, is necessary. And so we would urge this organization to strengthen those bodies. So we express our thanks for the annual report offered by the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, for 2020-2021, titled Continuing to Work to Overcome the COVID-19 Pandemic. We also underscore the work done in following up and helping the states, shepherding the states through the COVID pandemic, bringing together all the national portals in a overarching portal that was a hub for information, making it possible to take stock in real time of the pandemic as it played out. So we are grateful to PAHO for working with countries to help countries address the COVID crisis. And I should underscore certain aspects of that report: strengthening institutional capacities and essential functions of public health to improve the governance and administration of health, the use of WHO instruments to calculate the cost of vaccines used against COVID-19, facilitating communication and exchange between 27 countries of the region, information and coordination regarding the consequences of COVID-19 and a host of activities, or aspects rather, mental health, alcohol consumption, and that of psychoactive substances, gender equity in health and people's well-being. The perspectives and guidance that PAHO provided, making it possible to improve our health plans at the national level, have been very valuable. We also express condolences for the passing of Mario Lopez from the Secretariat of the ISHR. Thank you very much. Thank you. I give the floor to Panama. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The delegation of Panama is grateful for the reports offered by the different organs of the Inter-American system. We also recognize the worthwhile work carried out by the Inter-American Human Rights Commission's team, the commissioners, executive secretary, and the titanic work that collaborators, men and women in the commission, carry out in each one of the different areas and departments to the benefit of the Americas. Now, regarding the ISHR's annual report submitted at this GA, Panama applauds the successful forward movement in compliance with goals and putting together a strategic plan, that is, achievements of the 2017-2021 strategic plan, as well as the outside report, in which was a participatory and transparent way of highlighting success. Now, that can have been easy, considering how difficult COVID-19 must have made it, the budgetary challenges the organization faces, and the sheer breadth of the undertaking. Despite these obstacles, the team of ICHR made historic strides in its productivity, contributing directly to strengthening the Commission, benefiting all of the actors in the system. Panama trusts that this year's annual report will also show progress made relative to the last one, and reiterates that for compliance with the 2023-2027 strategic plan, you have the full commitment support of Costa Rica, or Panama rather. And we also take this opportunity to express thanks for the support that we have received from ICHR by way of technical training, which represents a highly appreciated support to the state. And Panama is fully committed to protecting and promoting human rights of all persons. Regarding the very worthwhile work done by the Inter-American Commission of Women, which during its very hard and ongoing work has made incalculable contributions to position the gender equality agenda, ensuring rights of women in the region, we commend the annual report presented at this assembly and the successful compliance with mandates laid out in it. The information in that document shows the SIM team commitment, that of its executive secretariat, of achieving mainstreaming of gender focus in each one of the pillars of this organization. The gender focus should not just be limited to human rights. It should also be included in the pillars of strengthening democracy, multi-dimensional security, and integral development. Let's not ever forget that women have faced different realities, and therefore we face different challenges. And to recognize this truth is the first step for there to be an intersectional focus in our public policies and legal frameworks which truly guarantee the protection of all women in all their diversity in the region. Strengthening and institutionalizing SIM should be a priority topic on the agenda of member states. We should find the mechanisms to protect the very important work done by SIM and to continue strengthening OAS's capacity to elevate to the highest level the demands of women of the region, the highest political level, despite the financial straits the organization finds itself in. Panama takes this opportunity to once again express thanks for the support given by the delegates to Panama's candidacy to preside over SIM. Maria Inés Castillo will be the president of SIM now, and that commitment was taken on with the purpose of working hard and to continue pushing for equality of women in the Americas. We also underscore that for Panama, it was an honor to host the 39th Assembly of Delegates of this commission in our country. And the good news, 2 days ago, the third debate of the creation, that is the creation of the Ministry of Women in Panama was finally created after a third debate. Thank you. The U.S. has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The United States takes the floor to make 4 quick points. First, just to thank the presidents of all of the commissions and committees and organizations for their reports and for the work that they've done in the past year. Secondly, to note and thank Canada and all countries who joined the statement on the deeply troubling human rights situation in Venezuela. Thirdly, just to single out briefly the very important work of the Commission on Human Rights and to thank President Mantilla for her presentation here today. The broad range of tools that the Commission on Human Rights has available make it unique in its ability to monitor and address human rights challenges and help protect the most vulnerable populations of our hemisphere. The United States reiterates our own commitment to the promotion and protection of human rights in our own country and across the region, and the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights plays a key role in helping OAS member states identify and address our most pressing human rights challenges. And then fourth and finally, just to double back and echo the comments of our colleague from Paraguay and express on behalf of the U.S. mission to the OAS our sadness at the passing of Mario Lopez Garelli this week. Mario was a true advocate for human rights and for fundamental freedoms. He was a generous and a principled colleague of the U.S. Department of State and the diplomats who serve in this organization. And we recall fondly that generations of young Human Rights Commission staffers called him Tio Mario because of the time and effort he dedicated to mentor and support aspiring human rights professionals. My human rights colleagues at the U.S. mission remain indebted to him for his support and his guidance, and we express our condolences to Mario's colleagues at the Commission, to the Paraguayan Embassy, to the OAS mission, and to his family and many friends. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ahora tiene uso la palabra.
Mexico has the floor. Thank you very much. The delegation of Mexico would like to express thanks for the reports of the Inter-American Human Rights Commission and the Inter-American Juridical Committee, SIM, the Inter-American Human Rights Court, and the Pan American Health Organization. And Mexico supports all of that work and is committed to strengthening their work. We think these are the organs, these are the bodies that lend the greatest substantive content to the Organization of American States, the Inter-American system overall. They're the ones that really have an impact in our societies. I would like to join in expressions of condolences of the organization, especially colleagues of the Inter-American Human Rights Commission, for the death of Mario Lopez Gorelli, who was someone very committed to the promotion and respect of human rights, and a dear colleague that I had the privilege of working with. Our most felt condolences to his family members. After those interventions, we thank the President of the Inter-American Human Rights Commission and of the Inter-American Judicial Committee, the President of the Inter-American Commission of Women, and the President of the Inter-American Human Rights Court for those reports, and also we thank the World Health Organization, Pan American Health Organization. We thank the delegations for all of your interventions. Now, at this point, we're still awaiting the report from the General Committee, which is why I would now give the floor to the delegations, permanent. Well, permanent observers. So I give the floor now to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I take the floor following the item earlier discussing the Falkland Islands. The United Kingdom continues to seek a positive and constructive relationship with Argentina in the best interests of both of our countries and of the region. Since this Assembly met last year, the United Kingdom and Argentina have worked together in many areas, as diverse as health and trade and human rights. We have seen our trade increase by over 10% and see a potential for it to grow much more. We have worked together for 3 years as co-chairs of the Equal Rights Coalition and brought together 42 member states and over 140 civil society organizations to a conference last month in Buenos Aires. In the 40 years since the conflict following the Argentine invasion, the people of the Falkland Islands have built a modern community, which now numbers over 3,200 people. Many of them trace their families back 9 generations on the island, but not all. There are now people from dozens of countries, including many of the countries represented here today, who have chosen to make their home as part of that community. In 2013, the people of the Falkland Islands were asked whether they wished to retain their links to the United Kingdom as a self-governing overseas territory. The overwhelming majority chose to do so. An observer mission from 7 countries, including Mexico, Chile, Paraguay, Uruguay, Canada, and the US, oversaw this referendum and gave a ringing endorsement of the process as free and fair. The people of the Falkland Islands have made their wishes clear. What we are talking about is the democratic right of the community who live on the islands to decide their own future. Argentina argues that the right to self-determination does not apply to the people of the Falkland Islands. This motion calls for 2 larger countries to negotiate without the consent of the islanders to transfer the islands to Argentina against the will of the islanders. The United Kingdom will not negotiate to transfer the sovereignty of islands, as the men and women who live on there have been very clear they do not want it. The Falkland Islands elect their own government. They have their own constitution, laws, currencies, and traditions. They deserve the democratic rights we expect for ourselves. The United Kingdom's military presence on the islands has significantly reduced since 1982 and is entirely defensive. We only have what we need to defend the islands. Argentina has enacted legislation that seeks to penalise international companies operating with the islands. They have ended cooperation with the Falkland Island governments on fisheries conservation, something in which we all have a shared interest. Despite all of this, the islands have welcomed the families of Argentine soldiers killed in the 1982 conflict. Mr. Chairman, the United Kingdom has no doubt about its sovereignty over the Falkland Islands, South Georgia and South Sandwich Islands and surrounding maritime areas. We have no doubt about the principle and the right of self-determination as enshrined in the United Nations Charter and in Article 1 of the 2 United Nations Covenants on Human Rights, by virtue of which the islanders freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic and social and cultural development. We want to work constructively with Argentina, but Argentina must accept that there can be no dialogue on sovereignty unless the Falkland Islanders wish it. On behalf of the people of the Falkland Islands, the United Kingdom asks the General Assembly to note their right to self-determination and that this statement is in the record of this meeting. I thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I offer the floor now. I apologize. Argentina has requested the floor. Please proceed. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Would that the willingness of the United Kingdom, Great Britain, and Northern Ireland to take part in this meeting and being an observer, that is something that's very important to us. Oh, I wish that translated in interest to dialogue on this subject matter. It has just repeated known arguments by the United Kingdom. I would just like to recall a number of things. First, it is true that Argentina and the UK do actively and productively work together on many topics.
And there are other issues on which we are not able to make progress because of the sovereignty dispute that we have over the Malvinas, South Georgia, South Sandwich Islands, and nearby maritime territories. The United Kingdom insists on disregarding this problem. They have said again that they will not negotiate until this is acceptable by the inhabitants of the island. They know they have negotiated. In fact, they have negotiated with Argentina on this. On the other hand, they maintain that those who live on the islands are British and that they will decide what must be done. They say that they occupy the territory of a sovereign state. They decide that they call on a referendum from their own citizens and that they will decide what they wish to do, and that it doesn't matter what the General Assembly says. This moves us to reflect, but I don't want to force parallelisms. We wish the voice of the General Assembly be respected. In fact, not long ago, we decided that when there's a veto in the Permanent Council, the Assembly must intervene. On the other hand, they maintain that many people live on the islands from different origins. The only Argentines authorized to travel to the islands are those persons whose remains, whose families' remains are interred there. Argentines are not allowed to move there, reside there, and own property on the island. So it is not a place that is open to the free circulation of persons. At any rate, it's not open to the circulation of Argentine citizens by a decision of the British government. We're told that we must reflect on the self-determination of peoples and there's an attempt to explain what the Charter says. The United Kingdom abstained from Resolution 1514. The process of decolonization begins thanks to the Resolution 1514. And some countries here present might not be here if it were up to the United Kingdom. So in this sense, we reiterate once again our full willingness to negotiate, to talk about this issue, and to seek to find a peaceful solution. The United Kingdom says that we take measures against companies or enterprises. The Republic of Argentina did not do that. There are laws in the Republic of Argentina which say, as in any other country, that for certain operations to be carried out in the national territory, they must have authorizations in keeping with the relevant regulation. And for us, the Malvinas, South Georgia, South Sandwich, and nearby maritime areas are national territory, and the law applies there as it does anywhere else in the territory of Argentina. This is not a measure against any company. This has been clear for some time now. We are told that the military presence is merely defensive. Defensive against whom? It would be good to know. Against what power would ships with nuclear weapons have traveled to the islands? Something acknowledged by Great Britain, but denied for many years. The introduction of nuclear weapons in a zone that was free of any nuclear power for many years. For this reason, it is difficult for us to accept the presence, and that has grown over the years, probably defensive against its own interests. 40 years have gone by since the 1982 conflict occurred because we were not able to resolve this otherwise. And Argentines showed themselves willing to lose their rights to defend, lose their lives to defend their rights. 40 years have passed, and yet we continue to come to an agreement that specialists may have access to human remains so as to identify the origin of some of the human remains interred there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gracias a la delegación de...
Thank you to the delegation from Argentina. We now give the floor to the delegation from Ukraine. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the support shown by many delegations to Ukraine and the continued support to our country faced with the aggression as expressed by the 6th of October from the Ambassador Mario Bucaro of Guatemala. It is my pleasure to now hear the message of the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky. Thank you. To the Secretariat, would you please share the message?
Yeah, representatives of the free nation of America, dear friends, I'm grateful for the opportunity to address you at this particular time when we have entered a defining phase of our war for independence, when our heroes drive the occupying army out of our land. Russia sent this army to our country to turn us into their colony, as it was, unfortunately, before in the time of empires. But millions of Ukrainians stood up to defend our freedom and our country, and will definitely not allow Russia to bring back that old unfair times. We have no doubts about winning this war and our ability to protect the independence of Ukraine. Daily victories at the front and dozens of liberated Ukrainian cities and villages prove it. There is only one question for us right now how many of our people Russia will manage to kill before it admits a defeat. How much more will Russia manage to steal from Ukraine? Grain, resources, industrial enterprises, which the occupiers simply disassemble and take out to Russia, as well as people. They are stealing people. More than 1,600,000 of Ukrainians were forcibly deported to Russia. They are dispersed across the territory of this state, scattered throughout remote Russian regions. Many of them and their documents taken away. And many of them passed through terrible Russian filtration camps where they were abused and intimidated. These are people, but for Russia, it's also a resource. We are doing everything to free our land as soon as possible, to save all our people from this invasion as fast as we can. We are doing everything to put an end to the long list of Ukrainian victims that Russia is creating. This is the reason I'm addressing you. We need your support to bring back peace faster for our people. I will be honest. I know that in some member countries of your organization, unfortunately, the Russian view of this war is dominant. And this is a false view. It is possible in your part of the world simply due to the fact that Russia spends billions of dollars annually on its propaganda, media, and other projects that create an illusory impression about it. But there are facts on the side of Ukraine, and I'm asking you just to look at these facts. Look from your point of view in terms of what your great American continent has been through, from the point of view of the struggle for independence that your people led in terms of simple human justice, which means so much to your countries and people, and in terms of what your national heroes fought for. I'm turning to the pages of the history of the American continent and asking, on whose side would Simón Bolívar be in such a war that Russia unleashed against Ukraine? Who would José de San Martín support? Who would Miguel Hidalgo sympathize with? I think they would not help someone who is just looting a smaller country as a typical colonizer. I think they would not support someone who constantly lies and doesn't even call a war, hiding behind the definition of special military operation. I think they would not sympathize with someone who deliberately puts different countries on the brink of starvation through an official food crisis, who drives people into poverty through price and energy crisis, both artificial, and who is so mean that he makes war against civilians, destroying all the foundations of normal social life using rockets and artillery against residential buildings, hospitals, schools, churches. I thank those of you who have already strongly supported Ukraine and condemned Russian war against our freedom and independence. And I thank your organization for suspending Russia's observer status. But we need more. We need more for the sake of peace and for the Russian army to leave all captured Ukrainian land. So I'm asking you to support us on several levels. The first level, international organizations, particularly the UN General Assembly. Please support us in voting to condemn Russia's aggressive policy. It is of our common interest, so that no one in the world can start wars of aggression like the Russia war against Ukraine, and so that no one in that world thinks that he has right to illegally annex lands of other nations, as Russia thinks. The second level is national. We need integrity from your states. Do not allow your economies to be used to finance criminal war and war crimes. Do not associate yourself with those who will inevitably be condemned by the international community. The crime of Russia's aggression against our country, the mass murders of civilians on Ukrainian soil, forced deportations, numerous cases of torture and rape, all this will certainly receive its verdicts. Please avoid your companies and countries to be connected with those individuals and legal entities in Russia through which it carries out its terror against Ukraine. Support sanctions against Russia. Limit your trade operations with Russia. Protect yourself from the risk of tarnishing your reputation with ties to a terrorist state and its companies, and limit its opportunities to continue this war of aggression against Ukraine. And the third level of support we need is the level of ordinary people. I'm not asking for much, just spread the truth about this war and the casualties caused by the Russian aggression. Just talk about it. Let your people know what evil Russia has brought to the absolutely peaceful Ukrainian people, a nation that has never started any wars of aggression. The greater the support for those who fight for the freedom and independence, the stronger freedom will be in general in the world, and the faster we will go all the way to freeing our land from the Russian invaders. I thank you for your attention. Long live freedom. Viva la libertad. Slava Ukraini.
Having concluded with the interventions of observers and in keeping with the regulation, the determination of each regular session will also determine the date and place of the 53rd regular session of the General Assembly, and I offer the floor now to delegations who would wish to address this.
Not
hearing any other requests for the floor, we recommend that the Secretariat address the date and place of the 53rd regular session of General Assembly in consideration of Articles 43, 44, and 45 of the regulation for the General Assembly. We will now take a short break from now until 8 p.m. in consideration of the fact that the General Committee is concluding the regulations that they are working on, so that we will return to continue our session at 8 p.m. Thank you.